All right, we're back on the record. I've had now an opportunity to review the exhibit or proposed exhibit of the video that Deputy Evans will be testifying about. So my ruling remains the same with respect to the Crawford objection, Confrontation Clause objection, hearsay objection. With respect to the Rule 403, starting at the 1016, I've reviewed carefully that portion. I find that there are, going to the point of 102130, particularly right before that, there is discussion first about fear of their father. But right around 10:20, there's discussion. I believe the child is saying that she saw a bullet. I can't tell exactly what the word is, but then there's a discussion it was loud. Then there's a discussion about the court dispute between mother and father, and I would find that to be the probative value of that outweighs any prejudicial value. After that point, so after 10:21:30, using the real-time clock, I think it is. Well, I'm not sure what it is, but it's the clock that's closest to the bar that's moving across the bottom. That at that point, there's in my view, the prejudicial value would be outweighs any probative value. There is a conversation at 10:24:12 about their knowledge of a firearm that the father kept under the bed. I'm not sure that's particularly probative, but I'll hear the state if they wish to argue about that.
Yes, sir. I mean, I reviewed my notes in terms of the time during our break, and I agree at the 10:20 mark, they do talk about the court, which is highly relevant to this case. At 22:24, one of the girls says didn't know Dad had a gun, and then I think one of them explains that, yes, Dad did have a gun under the bed. I agree. They have essentially acknowledged that he did this shooting, but they haven't pled guilty to anything, and so the state does still have its burden to prove its case. And I think
premeditation.
As to premeditation, and I think that is highly relevant, that he had a gun and they were aware of it. And to go forward in the timeline from that point, I would also argue that there is relevant information in terms of getting a phone number for the report. How long they've been living at Lake Glad since at 22:26. 22:27, they ID who Jeremy is their full brother, even though he has a different last name. And the very last thing on the tape at 22:28 is them saying that they're still scared of their father. So I would argue there's relevant information all through the end, but specifically that 22:24 incident when they talk about about their father having a gun is relevant to this.
All right, I have that at 24:12. Is that? Are your notes?
I think I'm looking at the different. There's two clocks on the tape.
All right.
I can.
Right. I think we're talking about the same conversation.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes,
Brown.
You know, I think that, again, in doing the whole analysis, you look at, I understand burdens and stuff, but you do look at what evidence has been presented, what has been contested. I think that if there are some things that are relevant later on, but it's filled with things that are irrelevant, there is no reason why that can't be silenced until we get to that point or moved ahead. I know that is a possibility as hell. I know a possibility as well. I know that has been, I know there's some trickiness about doing that from a technological standpoint, but it can be done.
Well, my overall impression when I'm weighing the probative value versus the prejudicial or undue prejudice, certainly the demeanor of the children is relatively consistent throughout. So the first 5 minutes, the demeanor of the children is evident, and it stays consistent throughout the entirety of the video. So the concern is really just the cumulative effect of that. But I don't find that cumulative effect is unduly prejudicial just simply because interspersed within that consistent demeanor, there are relevant and probative statements that are made and that I believe are admissible. So I'll agree that the possession of the firearm is probative, and so I'll allow it to go to the 10/24/12 mark, which is where that statement is, and then immediately thereafter, I don't think that the fact that they knew his phone number or that they continued to be scared of their father is particularly probative. It's cumulative. The phone number is not particularly probative of anything, and the fact that they continue to be scared is cumulative at that point. They've stated that several times. So 10/24/12 is where there's a mention on the clock that I was using.
Yes, sir.
There's a
Yes.
mention about the gun, and then so at the conclusion of that statement, I think both the girls talk about their awareness of the firearm. So immediately thereafter, we'll terminate the publication of this exhibit.
Yes, sir. I think we're at the same place on the time period.
All right.
Let me, sure.
Anything else that we need to take up?
No, sir. Well, one thing in all, I'm just trying, again, to figure out for purposes of what I need to do for appellate purposes and all. I guess what I will do is when the video is renewed, I will enter it into evidence. I will object for the grounds previously stated, which would include the constitutional grounds, hearsay, confrontation, and 403.
Yes.
All right, very good. Let's go ahead and bring the jurors out, and Mr. Waller, here's your...
Oh, thank you, sir.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry that took a bit longer than I'd expected, but in any event, I think we're now ready to proceed for the state to call the next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state will call Lorna Haddix.
hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Lively.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ma'am. If you would, just please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Lorna Haddix.
Okay, and Ms. Haddix, how are you employed?
I'm employed with Wake County Human Services.
And what's your position with Wake County Human Services?
Now I'm working with Work First.
What's Work First?
It's a program to help people get off of welfare
All right.
and things like that.
Thank you. Can you tell us what your position was back in 2014?
I was a Child Protective Services social worker
And how long did you work with Child Protective Services?
for over 7 years.
Tell me a little bit about your duties as a Child Protective Services social worker.
I covered all aspects, which was assessments, investigations, in-home, and did some foster care, but my primary responsibility was in-home.
Okay. And when you say in-home, would that involve, I guess, assessing child welfare matters and also setting up, I guess, family plans or safety plans?
Trying to coordinate services to help the family members that have been through any kind of issues that need to be resolved.
And again, your primary focus or your interest in a case is the best interest of the child. Is that
Always.
fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Haddix, can you tell me how you came to be involved with the Holden family back in 2014?
When an assessment was completed due to what they referred to as improper discipline, and there was also domestic violence that was implicated in the home, we decided that they needed further assistance after the investigation was complete.
Okay, so there was actually an investigation prior to March that was completed, and then it came to you?
That's correct.
All right, so Kathy Suithall with Child Protective Services testified yesterday. So how did it then become your case?
When she completed the assessment, she determined that things were not resolved and that they needed further assistance, making sure that services were followed through on, and mainly for the protection of the family, for the safety.
Yes, ma'am.
Because they still had concerns of that, and just making sure that the children got all the services that they needed.
All right. And so your role at this point is to coordinate and assist the family in getting the services they need for the welfare of the children.
That's correct.
Okay. Can you tell me about, I guess, your first interaction with either LaTanya or the defendant? I believe you had a phone call with Ms. Holden on March the 3rd of 2014, maybe about court.
That's correct.
And can you tell me a little bit about that?
She contacted me to inform me that they had a court date the following day, and she felt like she needed someone to go with her, and so she requested that I go. She was concerned about being around Nathan and just felt like she needed someone with her.
All right, so with respect to the statements made now, these are out-of-court statements. You're to consider them solely for the purposes of corroboration or impeachment and not for any other purpose. Go ahead.
Okay. So she essentially was asking you to go, there was a court hearing involving the children, she asked you to go with her?
That's correct.
Okay, and she cited concerns about being around the defendant at that time?
Yes.
Were you able to make it to court with her?
Well, we actually had a snowstorm that evening, and so court was canceled the next day.
Yes, ma'am. And then maybe a few days after that, you had an initial visit with LaTanya Holden?
I did.
Okay, and did you and where did you meet her?
I met her at her home on Lake Gladden Road.
And why do you go meet at her home?
Well, we always meet with families in the home just to see what the environment's like, to talk with the children, make sure that they're doing well, just see if it's clean, see if the children are being cared for, things like that.
Okay. And, I mean, without going into a lot of details about the meeting, were you satisfied that this was was this a satisfactory home environment for the children?
Yes, it was very, the children were definitely cared for well, and they looked very happy.
Okay. Now, was there a safety plan already in place at the time that you got involved?
Yes.
All right. And the safety plan is something that I guess would have to be accepted by all parties.
Well, they don't have to necessarily sign it, but they're given a copy to say that this is what needs to be followed in order for the children not to be removed.
Right. And were you aware as to whether or not LaTanya had signed the safety plan at that point?
She did.
Okay. And were you aware of whether or not Mr. Holden had signed the safety plan?
I was informed that he had not signed it.
Okay. Let's talk about meeting with the defendant, Mr. Holden. Did you have the opportunity to have a phone call with him maybe March 18th?
I did.
And can you tell me about that phone call? What did you call him, and what was the purpose of the phone call?
I explained to him how I was involved at this point in time, and what my role would be with their family, and that I needed to schedule a time to come and meet with him to talk about what the plans were, things that I would expect him to do.
Okay, and what were you expecting Mr. Holden to do and Jeremy to do at that time?
We felt like they both, Jeremy was already engaged in therapy, I believe, at that time, but there were allegations that Mr. Holden was involved in substances. So we just wanted him to have an assessment to determine if he needed further services, and also to cooperate with a domestic violence protection order, and just not to talk negatively about LaTanya in front of the children, just things like that.
Okay. Were you privy to what substance it was alleged might have been the subject of this assessment?
I just told that he had a lot of substance issues, and that it caused his behavior to be erratic at times. So we just wanted to make sure that services were not needed or needed.
All right. Well, when you spoke to him, what did he offer up to you by way of his feelings about this process or CPS's involvement in his family?
He felt like up to that point that everybody had sided with LaTanya. Nobody listened to anything that he had to say, and concerns about the children and LaTanya, that everybody had taken her side.
Okay. And did you, at that point, tell him that you were just there to assist the family?
Yes, and then our whole goal was to help his children and to make things better for them, and to try to offer assistance to both parents to make it better for everyone.
And this is the first time you've met with him, so essentially it's a fresh start, a new person that he's working with.
That's correct.
Did he, at the end of that phone call, agree to meet with you?
He did.
Okay, and when were y'all scheduled to meet?
We were scheduled to meet on March the 26th.
All right. And did you meet on the 26th?
We did.
Okay. And what concerns did he share with you that day?
The same concerns that that he felt like CPS had taken LaTanya's side. He wanted to be heard. He expressed a lot of concerns that he had, and I told him really my main goal was to make sure that they learned how to co-parent, that they weren't talking negatively about each other, and that He said that he just wanted his family back, and I basically told him that if he was to get back with LaTanya, that would be between them, but our main focus was the children.
Sure. Did you revisit the issue of the substance abuse assessment or the drug screen?
Yes.
And what did he say on the 26th?
He said that he was willing to do whatever we asked him to do, that he just really wanted his children to be okay and that he wanted his family back, but he was willing to cooperate with me in whatever way I asked him to do.
All right. Did he report any issues that he wanted you to look into, things that had been reported to him by his daughters?
He told me that his daughters had informed him that the maternal grandfather still had guns in the home and that it had been court ordered for him to remove all the guns.
All right. And so he made reference to a court order that prohibited the grandfather from having guns. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and this is on March 26th. He's telling you this?
That's correct.
Are you able to search homes?
We are not. That is something that would be law enforcement. That would not be CPS.
Well, did you tell him that you'd look into it?
I told him that I would be willing to ask the grandparents if they still had guns, if they had removed them. But as far as searching the home, that's not something normally CPS would do, that if he had concerns, he needed to contact law enforcement.
Okay. Well, did you go and look into that based on his request?
I did. I talked to the maternal grandfather, Mr. Taylor, and he said that he removed all the guns, had taken them to a neighbor's, and that I was more than welcome to go look around the house to see if there was any guns.
Okay. And did you let Mr. Holden know that you had looked into it?
I did.
All right. And so after you had satisfied yourself that the guns that were ordered out of the house back in February were in fact not there, you went and told Nathan Holden that you had double checked and that there were no guns in that house.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Well, at that point, did you talk with Mr. Holden about maybe getting together again to further go over the plan?
I did. We rescheduled our second home visit for April the 3rd.
And so the home visit was to occur at his residence?
That's correct.
Well, did you actually go out for the visit on April 3rd?
I did.
When did you set that home visit up? Did you set it up the previous day? Did you have a conversation on April 2nd?
We scheduled it whenever we were meeting on March 26th.
Okay.
To meet the next week, because at that point in time, we were going to develop his plan, his service plan, which basically lays out everything that he would be expected to do in order for Child Protective Services to close the case.
Okay, so y'all were going to create a plan, and if he completed the plan as laid out, then you would close the case and no longer be involved in the family business.
That's correct.
All right. And at the March 26th meeting, y'all hadn't set the plan up, is that correct?
We had not.
Okay.
That was our initial meeting.
And a substance abuse assessment or a drug screen hadn't been conducted yet, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, tell me about April 3rd and whether or not you met with the defendant that day.
I went to the house. I waited for a period of time, and he was still not home. So I called him, and he told me that he was actually at work and would not be able to meet with me that day. So he rescheduled it for the next day at the same time.
All right. So you spoke with him on the phone, rescheduled for the next day, again at 5 o'clock. So did you return to his residence the next day?
I did.
And what happened that day?
Again, he was not there. And so again, after waiting for a period of time, I called him again, and he said that he just wasn't going to be able to meet today, that we would have to schedule it another time.
All right. Had you spoken with him what types of, I guess, conditions he would have to meet on the safety plan, or y'all hadn't even gotten that far yet?
Well, we discussed basic things that he felt like his family needed, things that I told him that had been put on the, whenever the assessment had been completed, things that social worker Studhall felt like he would need to follow through on and to complete in order for us to be able to close the case. So I did cover those things, but the plan had not been developed yet.
Sure. But you actually listened to him and received his input in building a plan for the family, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and did you listen to his concerns and try and address those?
I did. We met for an hour and a half to 2 hours that day.
And how did you find him to be in terms of his demeanor?
It was kind of surprising because, of course, social worker Studhall had told me that he was not willing to cooperate with CPS, but I found him to be engaging, talkative, seemed to cooperate, saying that he was willing to do anything that we wanted him to do. So I was really pleased. I was excited that he was willing to work on things.
So you were pleasantly surprised, actually, when you met with him.
I was.
And did he seem disoriented in any way to you?
No?
Or did he seem impaired when you met with him?
No.
Okay. Well, on April 4th, he's unable to meet with you, and you talk about rescheduling for the next week. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When's the next time you see the defendant?
On April the 11th.
So that's a day and a half after the murders of Angley and Sylvester Taylor and the attempted murder of LaTanya.
That's correct.
Well, what were the circumstances of you meeting with the defendant?
He was actually at the Hammond Road Detention Center, and I went with the assessor, Kim Franklin.
Okay, now who's Kim Franklin and why is she involved now?
Once the incident had occurred with the grandparents and LaTanya, the children had to be taken into custody basically as a dependent. And so Kim Franklin was completing the assessment with the family, which means that she has to meet with the children, the parents. And so I was asked to go with her by the supervisor.
All right. So first of all, essentially, there's a new report and there's a new set of issues in terms the kids actually need to have a place to sleep.
That's correct.
Right. And so now it's not just a family safety plan, but it's placement of the children.
That's correct.
Okay. And their interest at that point just are those immediate needs.
That's correct.
Okay. And that's why Kim Franklin is involved in that portion of it.
That's correct.
Why did your supervisor ask you to go along with her to meet with the defendant?
Just because I had met with him before, and she felt like she needed someone to go with her.
Okay.
Maybe that had been familiar with him.
Right. You were already familiar with the case. Sounds like maybe built a little rapport with him.
I thought so.
You felt you had at least. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you say Hammond Road, is that the local jail annex here in Wake County?
Yes, it is.
All right. And again, the purpose of your meeting with him is for placement of the children. Is that correct?
To find out if he had wishes of where the children would be placed.
All right. And can you tell us about how your meeting began with him?
We discussed the allegations of what, and
Objection, Your Honor, for reasons that we have previously stated in our motion.
All right, those objections are overruled.
Okay. So you came and stated the purpose for your visit, essentially,
that's correct.
and that was the placement of the children?
Yes.
All right. And did he provide, any guidance on that, or did he make his wishes known?
Yes, he did.
Okay. What did he tell you?
He told us that he would like the children to be placed with the paternal grandfather, which is his father.
All right. And that's Nathaniel Carroll?
That's correct.
And he gave you his address and everything like that?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, what did you say to him next?
I asked him, you know, what happened, because I felt like things had been going pretty well and that he was willing to work on things and just to try to make his family better. And I just wanted him to explain to me what went wrong, you know, what happened.
Sure. And you actually mentioned, did you mention something to him about JT's birthday party?
Yeah, I did ask him how his son's birthday party went.
So you
that
were
was
aware
first.
that he was going to have that?
That's correct.
Okay. And what did he say about that?
He said that it went well.
When you asked him if something happened and that you said you thought things were going well, what did he tell you?
He told me that things weren't going well at all, and that it's because CPS got involved, and really, you know, we were asking questions and doing things that really weren't any of our business.
Okay. Did you try to address that concern with him?
Yeah, I told him that we were really just trying to help his family and help the kids and just to make things better for them, and that we really cared about what happened to them, which he, you know, said that we did not.
Did he say it was just a job to y'all?
Yes.
And did you talk to him just sort of about the, you know, the status of his case and things of that nature?
As far, can you clarify that?
Like, had he gone to court yet, or?
Yes, I asked him if he had a court date already scheduled, which he gave us a date when it was scheduled, and things like that.
All right. Well, again, you know, did you go on to talk about the children and the plan that y'all were attempting to put in place?
That we would have to look into his father, that any placements that were going to be considered, we would have to do background checks and things like that. We just wanted his input on what his wishes would be for the children.
All right. So again, a day and a half after the murders, you go to the defendant and ask him who he would like to see his children placed with.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you talk to him, you know, again about the murders, about April 9th?
I did.
Okay. And did you ask again about the children and whether they were present for it?
You know, we just asked him if he wondered how they were impacted and things like that, and you know, I don't think he said anything at that point.
Okay.
Well, I think he responded that nobody was worried about how he was impacted by all this. So.
Right. I believe you asked him how he thought that would impact the children, and what was his response?
That nobody really thought about how it would how things impacted him.
Okay. Did he go on to talk about you know, the cause of the incident with regards to LaTanya Holden?
He did.
What did he say?
He said that, you know, all this was her fault if she just would have answered the phone. That he continuously tried to call her all day. He called her and she wouldn't answer the phone. And if she would have answered the phone, none of this would have happened.
Okay. Did he make a statement about his responsibility?
Yeah, I asked him, you know, why did he do that? That, you know, they were very nice people, and he said, what's done is done. They got what they deserved.
In your note, there's also what's called a global assessment, and there's several bullet points. Is that part of the interview as well?
It is.
Okay. And so is this, I mean, do you actually speak to him and he reports to you about these issues? Is that how you gather this information?
Yes.
And is this the information you gathered on April the 11th?
Yes.
So what did he say with regard to alcohol use?
I believe he said that he did not use any substances.
Okay. Do you have this note in front of you? It would be, I guess, page 20 of your report.
Yes. Occasionally does, but he never gets drunk.
And what about discipline?
He talks to the children. He does not spank the children or hit the children.
And does he go on to further report?
Yes.
What's he say?
He talks about he never leaves the children unsupervised, and as far as the domestic violence, he stated there was never any domestic violence. That CPS stated that he beats the children.
Okay, but earlier in discipline, does he say does not ever leave any marks or bruises on the children?
He had stated that too, I think, with social worker Sudhall.
I see. Do you check into many mental health issues or diagnoses?
Yes.
Was there any?
I don't believe he had ever been screened for mental health issues.
Okay, but so you did not have a mental health diagnosis for him?
We did not.
Okay, all right. And again, did you ask him about whether or not he regretted what he did?
He said that he couldn't take anything back, and that they weren't trying, that basically, that Miss Holden wasn't trying to work anything out with him.
And was that before or after he said what's done is done, they got what they deserved?
He said that afterwards.
Okay. And did you then review and complete a safety assessment with him and leave him a copy of it?
Social worker Franklin did.
Okay, all right. Thank you, ma'am. I don't have anything further.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Ms. Haddix.
Hello.
You said that, you referred to the fact that you had been assigned to the case, or CPS had been assigned to the case because of domestic violence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But you're aware that the reason it was assigned originally was because of the domestic violence protective order, correct?
That as well as some inappropriate discipline with Jeremy.
Okay, with that aspect about it. And the inappropriate discipline, we're talking about the broom incident that happened into 2013?
That's correct.
And that is the one, that is the piece of it, that is the incident that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that you met with Mr. Holden,
That's correct.
and you had an hour and a half meeting with him?
It was somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yes.
And he was more cooperative than you had been led to believe he was going to be?
Yes.
He said he wanted his family back,
Yes.
and that he was willing to cooperate to help in that manner.
That's correct.
He expressed concerns about the fact that his father-in-law had guns in the house,
That's correct.
even though there had been a court order to remove the guns.
That's correct.
And you said that you checked with the father-in-law to see whether there were still guns in the house.
I asked him, yes.
Okay. But you're not a police officer who can search houses, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Although he was willing to let me, but that's not really our responsibility. If he says that they're gone, then we take his word for that.
You have to take their word for that.
Right.
Rather than do any type of search.
Right.
Because that's your role in that
Right.
regard. And he had missed a couple of appointments in early April, I believe, Mr. Holden. Is that right?
Correct.
Both times you called him, he said that he was working late that night.
The first time he said he was still at work.
Okay.
And then he rescheduled for the next day. The second day, he just said he wasn't going to be able to make it.
Okay. So you scheduled it for later on.
We were supposed to meet the following week, and I told him I would give him a call at the beginning of the week.
Okay, so you had scheduled that part about it. Talk about your meeting that was in the jail on April 11th
Right.
with him. That was less than 48 hours after his arrest, correct?
I believe so.
Yes. And you were there for the purpose of, your assignment was there for the purpose of trying to determine who should take care of the kids. Is that correct?
Whenever a new report comes in, we're responsible to meet with all family members. So Mr. Holden was part of that.
So it was to decide who
part of
should
it.
take care of the kids, right?
That's part of it, yes.
And part of that was at that point, LaTanya was in the hospital,
That's correct.
and you were trying to figure out, you should say, who would be best to have the kids at that point.
That's correct.
And that one of the primary reason for you going there was to determine who Mr. Holden would recommend to watch out for the kids.
That's part of it, yes.
Okay. What was your other part?
Well, the other part is to discuss what was put on the report and discuss the incident and, just, because anytime there's a report, you review the allegations that were made, discuss that with them, and then explain what will need to happen at that point.
Okay, so part of that you went in was to investigate the incident in question.
That's correct.
Okay, that was part of your responsibility in there was to do that.
That's correct.
And part of your responsibility in doing that is also, and of course, one of your responsibilities as, you work for the county of Wake County, don't you?
That's correct.
A government office, correct?
That's correct.
And of course, if you find out any evidence of criminal activity, one of your responsibilities is to report that, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if it's unknown, if it would be something that would be unknown, it would be.
Okay. If you find evidence about criminal activities, you report that, don't you?
We would.
Yes. You certainly made a report of what you found that day, didn't you?
What was made in the report in regards to the children?
About your interview with Mr. Holden, you made a report about that, didn't you?
The report was already made. That's why we met with him.
When you met with him, you made a report about that meeting, didn't you?
No. The information was already in the report.
You wrote down what Mr. Holden told you.
Well, actually, Kim Franklin was
Okay.
doing the documentation.
All right.
Yes.
Kim Franken, who was accompanying with you, made that report, correct?
That's correct.
And she wrote that down, what was said,
Correct.
right? And you're aware that was provided to law enforcement, correct?
Our notes are not given to law enforcement. I don't believe.
Okay. You're aware that the report that you wrote, the information that she wrote, the interview, got to the police, correct?
I am not sure if that's given to the police or not.
Okay.
Not normally.
Not normally?
No.
Okay. You're aware that Mr. Lively, in question, you had a copy of what you wrote down?
Okay, no. At that point, Kim Franklin was in charge of the case. I just went to assist her.
Okay.
So, yes, I'm not aware if she gave that to him or not.
All right. But when you first started talking about the allegations with Mr. Holden, you said you wanted to have the responses. He didn't answer you, correct?
To begin with, when Kim was asking him, he didn't.
Okay. And then one of you then asked him again, didn't you?
At some point,
And he said he didn't want to talk about it, didn't he?
yes,
And at this point, he was in jail.
that's correct.
And you knew he was facing 2 counts of first-degree murder.
Yes.
If I may have a second.
Yes. Redirect.
The defendant reported his concerns about the grandfather having the gun or having guns in the house in violation of a court order. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Is a domestic violence protective order a court order?
Yes, it is.
And does a domestic violence protective order the person whom it's in effect against not to possess any firearms?
It could say that.
Okay, all right.
Yes, I believe it
Where's
does.
that? If I have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
It's in, I think it's right. And again, this is State's Exhibit 48, I believe. Or I'm sorry, State's Exhibit 50. You know, this is a domestic violence order protection.
It is.
Okay. And the respondent here is the defendant Nathan Holden, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Right here, this is to the defendant number 2. Does that have any, there's a bold section. Can you read what that says?
Yes, it says if you have been ordered to surrender your firearms, ammunition, and gun permits, and you failed to surrender them as required by this order, or if you failed to disclose to the court all information requested about possession of these items, or provide false information to the court about any of these items, you may be charged with a Class H felony and may be imprisoned up to 30 months.
Okay, thank you. I don't think further.
Mr. Brown?
No further cross, although I think we may need to be heard.
Okay. All right, you may step down, ma'am. Members of the jury, I'll ask you to step in the deliberation room for a moment. Speak with counsel. Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I am trying at this point, and I apologize, I'm trying to find the order that you had entered concerning the suppression motion.
Yes, sir.
With it and all. And I would have done this at a different time, but I just want to make sure that my timing is correct about it and all. So I do apologize. We're trying to I have it, if I can just have, I have it in my computer, if I can just review it 1 second, because I want to make sure.
That might not be.
In the file that I can take a look.
Send you a copy of it.
Okay. Same base.
Yes, sir.
And proceed. It would be our contention that there was new information during that exchange that, that Ms. Haddix was talking more than my memory is of at the original time, that one of her purposes there was to investigate the allegations there. I think there was more of an emphasis beforehand was about placement, and that she just sort of had asked for that information for her own knowledge. I think that is new information that was not available to the court at the original hearing, and we knew because of that our motion for suppression.
For the same rationale that's stated in the conclusions of law previously, I would find that to the extent there was an investigation related to the Child Protective Services statutory duties, that this would not be a custodial interrogation, as that term is used under Miranda. It was not initiated by law enforcement officers, and that they were not agents of the police or the other law enforcement other law enforcement agencies, and therefore the motion would be denied.
And just for record purposes, it is for the reasons I just stated, plus everything that I stated in the motion previously, and we'll be making a motion to reconsider the order, which we understand that you have just denied, and that is also a motion to strike as well.
Yes, sir. All right, and those motions are all denied. If you have additional motions on, I'll certainly consider them. Are you making your motion to reconsider now, or did you say you will be making a motion?
I am making it, I just want to make sure for timeliness purposes that I'm making it now.
I see.
For it. So I'm making the motion now. It is possible that I may have additional authority that I would ask for reconsideration at that point. I don't have any of that authority right now, but I want to make it clear that for the record purposes that I have made the motion, as I believe as soon as possible in the
Yes.
circumstances.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, and if there's additional information you bring to my attention, I'll certainly receive it. All right, very well. Let's go ahead and bring jurors back in. Thank you again for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. Further evidence for the state?
Your Honor, at this time, the state would call Deputy Jeremy Evans to the stand.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Waller?
Thank you, sir. Deputy excuse me. Deputy Evans, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Will you please state your name for the record?
Jeremy Evans
And how are you employed, Deputy Evans?
with the Wake County Sheriff's Office
How long have you been with the Wake County Sheriff's Department?
for 9 years.
And back on April 9th of 2014, what were your general duties at that point, sir?
At that time, I was assigned to the patrol division, working the eastern part of Wake County as a patrol deputy. We respond to any type of call in the unincorporated areas of Wake County that are not in any of the city limits. 911 hang-ups, disturbances, domestics, animal control calls, any kind of call you can think of, just about.
And Deputy Evans, you said you were working the eastern part of the county. What was your general territory that you were covering?
Correct. The general area I was working was the Nightdale area that evening. We have 4 zones that are assigned on the east side. There's a deputy assigned to each one, and then there's several deputies that float the whole area. Generally, on each shift, there's 6 to 8 deputies that are assigned to the eastern part of the county.
And Deputy Evans, at approximately 9:48 p.m., do you recall where you were, sir?
Yes, sir. I was actually eating dinner with Deputy Pittman at McDonald's in Nightdale.
In Nightdale?
Yes, sir.
And at 9:48 p.m., sir, did you get a dispatch that caught your attention?
Yes, sir. There was what we call a solid tone, which is basically like an alert tone. It's anytime there's a priority call, it's to get your attention. It's an alert tone. It came out as a shooting. I believe it originally came out as a 911 hang-up, and they did an alert tone once it got transferred to Wake County as a shooting.
So this alert tone was the steady beep that you were talking about?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And at that point, you knew it was a shooting?
Correct. Yes, sir.
So when you got that call at 9:48 p.m., did you make the decision, or did you respond to the scene?
Yes, sir. Myself and Deputy Pittman immediately got in our vehicles and left from the McDonald's in Nightdale, which is at Nightdale Boulevard and First Avenue, and proceeded to the address that was dispatched, which was 1125 Lake Glad Road.
And approximately how long did it take you to get there, Deputy Evans? Or do you have your arrival time noted?
Yes, we were dispatched at 9:48, and myself and Deputy Pittman arrived on scene at 9:57.
Did you have any trouble getting there, sir?
Just like Deputy Broadwell and Shapcott stated, myself and Deputy Pittman, when we were arriving on scene, we drove a little bit past the driveway because it was not marked, and we backed up, and then I went into the driveway first.
And to be clear, were you with Deputy Shapcott and Broadwell at this point?
No, sir. They had arrived approximately 1 minute before we did. I heard them check on scene approximately probably 1 minute before I got there.
And what was the general scene when you arrived there at the residence?
I don't remember where Deputy Shapcott was, but I do remember Deputy Broadwell. There were 2 patrol vehicles already there, and Deputy Mackey was pulling up at the same time we were, and saw Deputy Broadwell on the porch, and he was bringing 3 juveniles out of the house. I don't know if he had entered the house yet or not, but I remember seeing him on the porch bringing the juveniles out of the house.
In regards to the alert that you got, you said it came out as a shooting call.
Correct, yes, sir.
When you arrived there at the scene, did you know if there was a suspect in custody or if this was still an active scene at this point?
At this point, we did not have any information as far as a suspect, any kind of vehicle description, anything of that nature. Our dispatchers give us information as they receive it on 911. They give out updates on the radio, and it also updates on our computer. At that time, I believe they had, if I remember correctly, they stated it was a 911 hang-up, and they were unable to reach the person who called back at that time.
So you knew very little about this case at that point other than it was a shooting?
Correct, yes, sir.
Did you even know at this point how many victims were involved?
No, sir.
And the general layout of this residence, sir, is it an area that's conducive to making it a secure location in a very short period of time?
No, sir. The property is very large. You have to go down a dirt path to get to the house. You can barely see the residence from the house. There's wooded areas on both sides, and the backyard is rather large. It opens up into a field.
And were there other structures on the property besides the residence itself?
After on initial approach, I did not see any other structures, but after the scene calmed down a little bit, yes, I did notice some more structures on the back of the property.
And so when these officers have testified about securing the location, there was a lot to secure at this point.
Yes, sir.
Especially not knowing if the suspect was still in the area.
Correct.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that the first time you see Deputy Broadwell, he's on the porch.
Correct.
And I think you said shortly thereafter you saw 3 juveniles running out of the house with him.
Yes, sir.
Had at this point, Deputy Evans, you even entered the house?
No, sir. I had barely even exited my patrol vehicle at this point.
And how would you describe the demeanor of those children as they were exiting the house?
There were 2 younger girls. They were extremely upset, crying, almost to the point of hysterical. the older male, he was upset, but he seemed to be, he wasn't as obviously as vocal as they were, but he still just kind of seemed in disbelief at that point, just kind of in shock almost.
And where were these children taken at this point?
Excuse me. Deputy Brawwell brought them to me, at which time I took them around to the passenger side of my patrol vehicle and had them seated in the back of my patrol vehicle at that point.
Was there any specific reason why your vehicle was chosen?
There was not. Mine was, when he brought the children out to me, I just brought them back to my vehicle to secure them at that point, because at that point we still didn't know how many suspects there were, where the suspects were at, and the scene had not been secured at that point by any means.
And you mentioned there were several other deputies around you. At that point, when the children were in the car, did y'all take some precautions to make sure that they were secure?
Yes. Deputy Pittman had arrived on scene at the same time I did, not knowing where the suspects or who the suspects were, and being that it was a wooded area and at that time the scene had not been secured. Deputy Pittman was standing behind me with his gun at a low ready, because I had my back towards the woods. I was attempting to gain information from the children at this point, so I was facing them, concentrating on them, so he had his gun at a low ready. Basically, if there was any threats that came towards us, he would be able to provide protection.
And at this point, at this very early stage, what general type of information were you trying to get from the kids?
At this point, I was trying to obtain any suspect information, description of a suspect, suspect vehicle, if they were still on scene, and how many suspects there were at this point.
And was this something, again, to make sure that you could identify if there were suspects present or who you need to be looking for?
Yes, sir.
And I think I forgot to ask you this, Deputy Evans, but what time did the children actually get in your patrol car?
I have noted at 9:57
PM?
Yes, sir.
And is that the same minute that you arrived there on scene?
Yes, sir, it is.
Now, the children that were in the back of your patrol car, do you now know the identities of those three children?
Yes, sir.
Who are those three children?
Amber, Nautica, and Jeremy.
And who do you understand those children to be?
The children of the defendant and Miss LaTanya Holden.
Okay. And were the children able to give you some identifying information as to the suspect in this case?
Yes, sir, they were.
Who gave you the information as to the suspect?
Jeremy, the oldest of the three, was able to provide me a name and stated it was Nathan Holden. It was his father. And
when Jeremy made this statement to you, do you recall if he was still on the phone at that point?
I don't remember if he was on the phone or not. I don't believe he was, because he was providing information to me, but I'm not 100% sure.
And how about the girls? Did they make any statements at this point regarding who the suspect was?
I don't remember at what point they made statements, but at some point while they were in the back of my car, they also stated it was their father that had committed this crime. Now,
You said when the children first exited the residence there, they seemed to be very, very excited
yes, sir.
and upset and so forth.
Yes, sir.
Was their demeanor any different than, was the demeanor of the children any different when they were there in your patrol vehicle?
No, they continued to be, I would describe the girls as hysterical, crying. I was unable to get them to calm down, honestly. Knowing the situation that happened, that's obviously understandable. But they were, at that point, I couldn't even calm them down.
And I think you mentioned that you not only maybe got some information about the suspect, but did you also attempt to get some information about a suspect vehicle?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And were the children able to provide you some information on the suspect vehicle?
They did. Jeremy stated that his father had left in a older model Chevrolet truck, black or blue. He couldn't remember which color it was, but he said it was black or blue.
And when you got the information about who the suspect was and a possible vehicle description, did you relay that information to other officers?
I did. Once the name was given, suspect's name was given, that was the first thing that I gave out on the radio over our main channel, because any kind of incident like that, until we get on scene and figure out what we have, they lock down our main dispatch channel, and we're able to talk kind of freely. Once we get the incident under control, then they'll move us to another channel where we can talk and not tie up the main channel. But at that point, I gave a description of the suspect's name, and shortly after I got the vehicle description, I also gave the vehicle description over the radio as well. So other units coming in, there was a large number of deputies that were responding to the scene. So I was trying to get that information out as soon as possible. And also our dispatch will give out a broadcast to the other agencies, Wendell, Knightdale, Zebulon. They'll give out a broadcast in case the suspect vehicle is located in any of those areas as well.
And after receiving the suspect name and vehicle information, were you asking these children any other questions during the course you interacted with them, Deputy Evans?
I did. Obviously, I was attaining their information as far as their names, how old they were. Also began gathering information as far as where they lived at. Any information that would help us in our investigation.
But at this point, sir, you're not asking them as to what happened there in the house. Is that right?
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah, you're just trying to identify them and any suspects and victims at this point.
Yes, sir.
Now, you said that the children got in the back of your car at 9:57 p.m. How long are they in the back of your patrol car?
The oldest, Jeremy Taylor, was in my patrol car from the time I arrived on scene, and he was placed in Deputy Sada's car at 10:18 p.m. The two juvenile females were Amber and Nautica were in my car the entire time until Investigator Scheinberg arrived on scene. He was one of our juvenile investigators. At that point, they had made the decision to transport them down to our sheriff's office, and I transported Amber and Nautica down to the sheriff's office to be interviewed by our juvenile investigators.
And so from 9:57 until 11:49, they were, at least the girls were in your presence.
Yes, sir, they were.
And Jeremy until 10:18.
Yes, sir.
And did their demeanor change during the course of your interaction with them?
It did not.
And after you got the identifying information of the suspect and the suspect vehicle, what was your primary concern regarding the children at that point, Deputy Evans?
At that point, it was still the safety of the children until we made 100% sure that the scene was safe. My primary focus that entire night was to take care of them, to make sure they were safe until family members, somebody was able to provide care for them at that point.
So you were generally concerned about their welfare at
Yes.
this point?
Yes, sir.
Now, Deputy Evans, do you have a camera in your car, sir?
I do.
Can you tell us a little about the camera that you have in your car and how it works?
Most of the patrol vehicles, patrol deputies have cameras in their in-car cameras. We use Panasonic cameras. There's one camera facing, or one lens facing out and one facing in the car camera. Basically, so you can see what's going on outside the car and inside the car. There's audio and video that's associated with this. There's microphones inside my vehicle and also one that I wear on my belt in case I'm interacting with someone outside of the vehicle. The audio is still being recorded as well.
And how is this camera activated?
I have 12 triggers that, any kind of triggers that automatically turn the camera on. They include the wireless microphone that I wear, my blue lights. If you slam on brakes too hard, the wireless transmitter, the mute button on the camera. If I'm involved in a crash on the front, the rear, the left, the right side, or if the vehicle rolls over, and also if the vehicle goes over 100 miles an hour, the camera is automatically turned on.
And how do you turn this video off?
There's several ways you can turn it off. You can manually turn the camera off, and there's also on my computer, the camera is connected to the computer system, so you can either bring up the program on the computer system and turn it off on there and classify the video, or you can turn it off manually, either way.
And have you had the opportunity to review this video based on the night in question?
I have.
And how do you turn the video off on the night in question?
I manually turned the camera off. At this point, due to the amount of time that we've been on scene, the computer had already basically password protected, so nobody else could see what the CAD comments and anything else that was showing up because our dispatchers give updates. So the computer had basically locked itself, and instead of pulling this back up so that since the children were in my car, I manually turned my camera off by holding there's a red record button on the back. You hold that down for 5 seconds and it turns the camera off.
And you mentioned that there was radio traffic talking about what was going on at the scene that night.
Yes, sir.
At some point during the period of time the kids are in the car, do you turn your radio traffic off?
Yes, sir, I do. The video, throughout the whole video, you'll hear the radio. It's pretty loud, just due to when I'm traveling to the scene. Obviously, my lights and sirens are going. It's hard to hear what's going on or what the dispatcher's updating. When I got on scene, I did not turn the volume down just because of arriving on scene. It was a chaotic scene. The girls were brought straight to my vehicle, so that you do hear the radio in the background. Towards the end of the video, I believe it's when I'm exiting the driveway to take the girls down to the sheriff's office, one of the deputies locates Sylvester Taylor in the rear of the property, and I heard him say, "We've located a body," and at that point I immediately cut my radio off because I didn't want them to hear what was being said on the radio.
And when the kids got in the car, and even when you got in the car, Deputy Evans, did they know whether or not their grandparents were still alive?
I don't believe they did at that point. They knew they had been shot. I don't know if at that point they knew they had been killed.
And how about LaTanya? Do you know if they knew the status of their mom?
They didn't. I know Jeremy made the statement to me, or I'm sorry, I don't know if they knew the status of her. I know Jeremy, throughout the conversations in the car, stated to someone on the phone that his mom had been beaten up.
Now, if you want to retrieve a video such as from the night in question, how do you go about doing that, sir?
All of our cameras have the images are saved on a SD card, just like a normal video camera would. In our patrol vehicles, there's the actual camera system. The camera is locked, and it has to be manually unlocked by a key and the SD card taken out. The only people that have access to those has a key to that is our computer technology staff. They are the only ones that are able to unlock it and take the card out, and they manually upload the video from the SD card onto our servers at the sheriff's office.
And then from those servers, it can be downloaded for court purposes.
Correct. The computer technology staff is only individuals that are allowed to make copies of it for court purposes.
And so, Deputy Evans, you can't even access the recording card yourself?
No, sir.
And have you had the opportunity to review the video from the night in question, sir?
Yes, sir. The last time I viewed it was approximately 3 months ago, I believe.
And did that video appear to be altered in any way?
No, sir.
Or edited in any way?
No, sir.
And do you, or to your knowledge, any other members of the Wake County Sheriff's Department have the ability to edit that video in any way?
No, sir. Once the video is downloaded to the server, nobody has access to. There's only 4 individuals with the computer technology staff that has access. The servers are located in a downstairs basement. There's only 4 people that have access to that room. Once you go into that room, there's another card access that has to be used, and those same 4 people are the only ones that can get in there, and the actual server itself has a card access on it as well. So there's 3 different levels of security just to even get into the building where the server's at.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Deputy Evans, I'm going to hand you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 85. What does that object appear to be?
That is the DVD from my in-car camera.
And is it labeled in-car camera video at crime scene?
Yes, sir, it is.
And Deputy Evans, you've had the opportunity to review the video from the night in question?
Yes, sir, I have.
And does it fairly and accurately reflect the interaction that you had with JT, Amber, and Nautica on April 9th of 2014?
Yes, sir, it does.
Any changes or alterations?
No, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 85 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, so we review the objections and the reasons that we have stated.
Those objections are overruled. The 85 is admitted.
Your Honor, at this time, I would ask to publish State's Exhibit 85 using the video monitor in front of the jury.
All right. This is how long is the?
I believe we've calculated, how long? 35 minutes.
All right. We are planning to recess for the day at 1 o'clock. I think that probably, unless you want to break it up and do part of it
I'd
now.
rather not break it up.
All right, I think the best thing to do is just to then begin there Monday morning.
Okay, yes, sir.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are going to recess for the afternoon, and then we'll resume Monday morning at 8:30. I want to, first of all, thank you all very much for your service, and then secondly, just remind you of the rules and instructions that remain critically important throughout this trial, not to talk about this case with anyone. Don't let anyone talk about this case in your presence. Don't talk among yourselves about this case. No media or independent investigation into these matters, and I'll remind you that there is media coverage of this case, so use extreme caution around all media outlets. No conversations with parties, witnesses, or lawyers, and please don't form or express any opinions about the outcome of this case. Leave your notepads in your chairs. Have a good weekend, and we will see you at 9:30 Monday morning. Just come directly to this courtroom, gather in the deliberation room. Thank you. Matters that we need to take up before we recess. Well, I'll read the note. I mean, it's in effect requesting. It's a substantive request, and so, well, I'll read it. It just simply says, may the jury have a timeline of events for this case. It's from one of the jurors, so.
Sure.
All right. So in any event, let's, are there any other matters that we need to take up?
I assume that's closing advice or something like that that is being given by the jurors. But the one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about scheduling, and we're trying to organize witnesses in case we present anything at guilt, innocence, and we have one out-of-town witness who we are trying to arrange to be here. We have a flight scheduled for Tuesday, and I'm trying to coordinate. I think at this point the state is talking about maybe finishing up Tuesday, but I wanted to check about, I guess we're saying we'd be in good position to go forward with our witnesses Wednesday, and maybe one or two witnesses Tuesday, depending what time.
I think based on what the state has left in terms of evidence that we're going to fill Monday and Tuesday after Deputy Evans is done, we've got about 5 CCBI witnesses, 3 SBI witnesses, one medical examiner, and another doctor, definitely, and there might be a couple other witnesses as well. So I think we're easily going to go through, or Tuesday and might even spill into Wednesday, but that's our best guess. So it shouldn't be an issue scheduling wise.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to ensure of.
And based on that forecast, if we get to Tuesday afternoon and the state rests, I won't have a problem with just recessing for the afternoon, and there may be some things we could work on at the break as well. But so if it's a question of witnesses not being available till Wednesday morning, I think we can live with that.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, very good. Thank you all. Have a good weekend. We'll see you Monday morning.